Good evening, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of High Top Sports. Listen, I'm dead serious this time. I'm always serious. But we have a jam-packed show. The coaches are being hired and extended as I'm clicking the live button. I think 6 more coaches have been hired and 6 more coaches have been extended in the last 30 seconds, and we're going to talk all about it tonight. Napier had a presser. It wasn't live. But we've got boots on the ground. Cam Parker's going to join us. We've got transcripts from the interview. We're going to talk all about it. Okay, a lot of great information that came from this, and I'm really excited to talk about it. And again, in case you guys are wondering, Napier confirmed he's calling plays once again because it was asked about, as it would be and as it will continue to be. But somebody asked the perfect question, which we're going to go into. Here's what they said to him. They said, "Is it annoying to be Is it annoying?" question to be asked, referring to, are you calling plays? And we'll talk about his response. Smash the like button, subscribe. Good to see all you beautiful people. This show is, of course, brought to you by Prize Picks, leading up to the Super Bowl week. And without further ado, David Schroeder, baby. What's going on, baby?
Hey, salutations.
Forget about it.
Yo, I just got off the phone with Vinny earlier today. He said he had something cooking like a hot pastrami on the recruiting trail, but he did tell me he's got a new GTO partner in town on the prowl on the Gainesville shore. But hey, it's iTop. It's Wednesday. Prendiamolo, endiamo.
He does have a new GTO partner in Robert Bala. Unbelievable. And we've got a new character for our man Cam Parker. I was watching Home Improvement because it's now on Netflix, and I looked at Al. I think his name's Al. Tim's right-hand man on his show, and I go, holy shit, it's Cam Parker's, or it's Cam Parker's dad. Dude, look, it's I love it. Man.
What the hell?
Cam's been called everything but Cam.
The lookalike. So we were talking about it before the show that, I, as a young journalist, I could use notoriety or recognition from any point. So, Travis Trittnight on High Top, Home Improvement. When I had the long hair, Joe Dirt. The smelling salts guy. I'll take anything at this point right now. Listen, that degree over my shoulder didn't pay for itself, so I got to put it to use in some way, shape, or form. So glad that it's somewhere at least.
I'm sure Mama Parker loves hearing. She's like, "It's my son Cam. It's none of these things. It's Cam. It's Cam to you." I love it. Well, like I said, we got to jump right into it because I don't have a graphic or any of this or any thing for this, but Chapman did get an extension, which we were going to talk about, which is great news. We talked a little bit about on Monday because you saw that the Bears went elsewhere, but Florida just hired Ben Elser as director of football strategy. So we'll talk. I mean, there isn't much to talk about it, to be honest with you. I don't know who he is. The role isn't even the VP role, which we are going to talk about at the back half of the show because there's some interesting things that I do want to dive into about that. But this role is uncharted territories, from my understanding. We don't know what this is going to bring to the table. It's the new evolution of college football is why this man's being brought in, right, Cam?
And it's revenue share. I mean, Billy, he kind of hinted that they were going to hire that position to be done. Just going through the transcripts from the press conference today. Let me find it here. Yeah, so you said, I think the most recent hire for football strategy, I think it's a little more contracts, caps, and analytics. We're a year away from having a lot of data in both the rev share space and in the marketing / endorsement space. So this is revenue share. It's contracts for players. It's getting a handle on all of that because that's coming this summer. And I believe Al Verdi was the one who said it. This is going to be the number 2 guy in the front office. So you'll have where the VP is, which they haven't hired yet. This guy's going to be right underneath him. It's a brand new role because it's for brand new rules in college football. So it's good that Florida, I don't know if they got ahead of anything yet because other programs around the country are hiring GMs too. But, Florida's taking good steps and, we'll see. It's going to be one of those hires that like when it works, you're not going to hear too much about it. If it doesn't work, everyone's going to be up in arms and pissed off, and you're going to know about it. So it's just one of those things where you kind of just have to wait and see because it's such a new thing. Like revenue share is brand new. I know paying players isn't new, but legally doing it and having a number and split your 105 or whatever guys and your other sports too. I mean, they got to figure that out. So, we'll see. But it seems like that's what this guy is going to really be in charge of. I think he's well liked. He was on the 33rd team, which is that analytics website. He had a high position up there. I think he was chief of staff. So he's experienced in analytics in these types of fields. We'll wait and see. If you don't hear about it, it's working. If they have to make changes, then something's wrong. So it's kind of one of those where it's best if you don't hear anything, because then there's no issues.
I love it. I'm fired up tonight because there's a lot of things to talk about. This being one of them, it just kind of builds on what we're going to be getting into. Of this thing is moving faster than I think we can truly comprehend. And what I mean by this thing, I mean college football. With the ref sharing, with NIL, it is constantly evolving and changing. The rules are changing. I mean, it's changed 3 times. Just the transfer portal rules of how long it's going to be open every year that it's been here. And so to Napier's credit, I remember, again, everybody and people still believe this, that he's in over his head. But by golly, I mean, he's managed this one way or another. And, some of these moves that he's happening, they don't make sense because why are we doing them? But it's a foreshadowing move. And if Billy wasn't doing them and somebody else was, they're like, this isn't innovative. Why isn't Billy being innovative? Billy's doing it. It's like Billy's making stuff up. Billy's just wasting time. Like, the guy can't win at this point. I feel bad for him. Again, we're going to talk about this too because he hired himself another co-defensive coordinator today. Everyone run rampant. Before we get into who this is and why this is important, what we were just talking before the show, can you give me any other coaches that have 2 co-defensive coordinators or other teams that have this? Do we know any?
Alabama.
Who?
Alabama.
Okay, they're pretty good. Okay, I just wondered. All right, go ahead.
And there's probably a couple more, but Alabama was the first one that immediately came to mind. And listen, I learned that too today because I was at the baseball scrimmage with Delatorre, and he just goes, another DC? And, we kind of think about it a little bit. But then, when people were talking about it on Twitter, this is the era of college football that it's moving towards. This is where you have one guy kind of running your unit, and you have guys who are taking on other roles underneath that guy. The main guy being Ron Roberts as your defensive play caller, and your assistants taking on roles. And, the co-DC thing, it's just a title. Like, their entire defensive staff is a collaborative effort anyways. So I get kind of the arguments of, well, why didn't he name Chapman co-DC? Why didn't he name Will Harris co-DC? It is what it is. Like, it's just a title. It's just a title. It's not going to change much. Even then, I don't have any concerns with the defense. I don't have concerns with the defensive staff. They proved their worth last year. They're bringing back a core group of their veterans. Love the defensive class that they signed in high school. I love the young guys that they have coming up. I don't have concerns over the defensive staff. They could give everyone on that side of the ball co-DC. I would not care. Would not care whatsoever. It's just, listen, you're not limited by NCAA rules anymore with assistant coaches. You could have as 100 if you could afford it and if you wanted it. So that's all that Florida's doing right now is they're just loading up their defensive staff. They had a couple analysts leave for Georgia State, so they had a few more, room. They had room to work with that position, and it gives. He's essentially replacing Austin Armstrong. You look at it that way, where he's taking over on the defensive side, basically running the linebacker room. That allows Ron Roberts to really focus on being the play caller and running the entire show. I don't have a problem with it. I know why people will be annoyed about it because of a DC, but this is just the era of college football that we're living in. I don't have concerns over the defensive staff. Offensively, we'll see because of the play calling thing. I know Billy talked about that today too, but defensively, I just don't have concerns over the staff.
So, and I don't think people had concerns, but again, what frustrates people, one, because it's Billy and they want to get frustrated. Two, it's like, why is there 2 co-DCs? And I think you kind of alluded to it, is that one, we did lose some analysts that, maybe they weren't a big splash when we lost them, but they went on to higher roles at their current colleges. And we were talking before the show, why the titles matter to an extent is, one, because you were saying it allows for the ability to go out and recruit. Ron, I think we've known pretty clearly that the guy doesn't want to go out and do a lot. He wants to just call plays and stay at home and run the ship. I'm cool with that. Like, he's been honest about it, and it's like, no problemo. That's fine. Give these guys two co-defensive coordinators that have success recruiting, that want to go out and do these things. It's a hell of a job to go out and do, to go out and recruit. It's not fun. It's unless you enjoy it. And Coach Vinny, forget about it. Has already had a lot of high praise coming in. Has had high praise since the guys hit. Has had high praise since coming in. So love that. As regards to having input on the defense, like you said, and even Coach Napier said it today. He goes, it's Ron Roberts' thing. It's his show. He's calling the plays. These other guys are going to take on other roles. Here's another big thing. Like you said, hey, we can have as many guys on the sidelines as we want. Why not have more eyeballs, more hands, more hands in the pot? Breaking up these groups. This safety cornerback room is massive. Guys get lost in translation. Let's separate it. Let's get honed in on it. Why not? We have the ability to do it. It's not taken away from this. It's a separate budget. Love that. When you give someone a big title like co-DC, yes, it helps with more money, I imagine. But now you can throw more responsibilities on that person, and they really can't complain. When you got an analyst and you're asking him to do maybe this and that, I think it more goes to just the responsibilities of what they're able to go out and do. You're giving two guys now the power to go out and recruit versus just one when it was just basically Armstrong that was running the show. So for all those reasons, I like it. And again, the hire we really didn't even get into is Coach Robert Ballard, who coached at Alabama, right? Coach Vinny coached at Alabama as well. Don't forget. And even when he talked about Coach Vinny, Napier said that he asked Nick Saban about this hire in today's presser, and Nick wrote off on it, which I loved hearing. But yeah, they kind of all come from this same tree, and I believe Napier and Vinny coached together. I don't know if did Robert and Vinny coach together at some point at Alabama.
No. So Ball is relatively new to the Power 5 coaching level. He coached at Bama in 2023 and Washington in 2024, and I believe that those have been his only Power 4 jobs. So that's
Okay.
I think where there's something to do about his overall experience because he's so new to the Power 4 level. But I know that he has the co-DC title, but he's not being asked to run plays. So it is what it is. But Vinny, I believe he played safety at Bama when Billy was there. I believe that was where there was overlap.
Gotcha.
He was a starting mid 2010s around that time. So I think that would have been Billy's tenure as the receivers coach. So there is some familiarity there. And then, of course, his dad coached at Florida. So the Sunseri family is very well known in coaching circles. I know Vinny's earned a lot of respect as a young coach over the last few years. And I know that Saban thinks very highly of him. So I like the hires. I like the youngness of it to kind of balance out the experience that a guy like Ron Roberts has while he runs the show. We'll see how it works. But again, I don't have concerns over the defense. Don't have concerns over the staff. I like the ideas that they put together. I don't worry or think about a co-DC title as much as other people do. Is what it is. Gerald Chapman could have the co-DC title. It wouldn't really make a difference to me. It's a collaborative effort anyways. They're organizing their coaches to run specific position groups. You don't have the confusion that you did last year over who's calling plays. Is it Ron Roberts or is it Austin Armstrong? Who's your defensive coordinator? What in the heck is an executive head coach? You don't have that confusion this year. You have your guy. Ron Roberts is calling plays. Everyone else has a specific position group. They all answer to him. It's a collaborative effort. It looks a lot better than it did going into last season. I like it a lot better.
Spot on. I think honestly, since Napier has been here, and I thought we had it last year, but we honestly now know going into it, we didn't. There's definitely more clarity and more organization going into it. Swoldy, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting, too, because Bala, I guess you'd say Bala, Big Bala, whatever, however you pronounce his last name. I mean, he was originally supposed to come in for an off-field role, and then it turned into a co-DC and position coach job, according to the CBS article over here. And, you got to think, like, if you get those accolades from Nick Saban, I mean, I guess that kind of boosts you up there, especially in Billy Napier's mind, considering he, coached under Nick Saban. And as far as, like, co-DC, whatever, I mean, you can give anybody a title, but that doesn't necessarily mean that is going to be, their responsibilities to call plays on Saturday. I mean, obviously, we all know Ron Roberts is going to be the main guy. Can these guys give him a little bit of input from the players, give him some analytics, something like that to help him out, and maybe on game day? Maybe that is probably the strategy that they're trying to take. And it's like what you alluded to, Shelton. It's like you got more bodies out there to recruit. So that's a good thing there as well. So you're not consistently having coaches out on the trail, not, losing sleep and all that. You got guys to say, hey, look, go talk to this kid, go talk to that kid. And Vinny's been on a tear lately. Okay. Mr. Thalia over here. Um, but yeah, I mean, like as far as like the new hires and especially the guy that's going to be the director of football strategy, I mean, we're still going to have a VP. I've heard they've interviewed at least 5 people for the VP job. We'll see what happens there. Um, I just don't have any complaints. I just think it's small to complain about that. I've heard people complain about like what Billy Napier was wearing, like black or something like that. And I don't even really care what he's wearing. Just win me football games. So, I mean, you never know. I mean, some of these other colleges, some of these other schools around across the nation could be making the same kind of hires. So, like maybe Billy's jumped on the pedal there, and you heard Tim Skipper's name thrown around. Obviously, it doesn't look like that guy is going to be a candidate now. Who knows? I mean, we've heard so many names pass through Florida for at least the past week for some of these roles, and it looks like they're really trying to fill these positions really quick. And you got to in the day and age of college football, especially with revenue sharing and everything else. So, I mean, the earlier you jump on it, the more guys you get in here, and the more qualified guys you get in here too. We all know how articulate Billy Napier is with his hires and articulate with who he brings into the program as far as players. You would like to think that the people that he is hiring for these certain roles are going to be really, really good in these roles as well. So I guess it's just a wait and see moment from here.
And he talked about Coach Vinny as well on being like Austin Armstrong. And here's what he said. He said, I think that's to be determined. Yeah, but yeah, I think a similar mold in terms of big picture thinker. I think just kind of sees it, can see it well. That type of dialogue, I think they could very well happen. Now we haven't defined that yet. But yeah, it's in the mold in terms of what he can become. So I think there's a lot of high hope for Coach Vinny. That's our guy. Forget about it. And what he's going to be able to come at this point. Had Robert? I don't think Robert had been hired during this presser, so they didn't. Yeah.
No. So Billy's presser was today at I think like 11:30. It was in the morning. And then Robert Bala, he interviewed, which came out early this afternoon, and then the official hiring came out at around. I mean, first I heard about it was around 5:30, right when baseball was beginning its scrimmage. So this happened very fast. It was I don't know exactly what role Tim Skipper interviewed for. I know that it was a kind of a linebackers role too, because he coached linebackers, but I don't know if they were going to give him a co-DC title. But yeah, this happened. It seemed like pretty fast as far as the process of getting this done. They could have been interviewing him and talking to him for a while, but the actual process of getting him inked and getting him on the staff seems to have been pretty fast. So it was, Florida's. I know Billy takes a while to move, and it kind of frustrates people how slow he can be. But when he gets moving, and they got a good one today, I think.
Yeah, moving down the list. And then Ron Roberts asks, how could this impact Ron? He goes, yeah, well, look, I mean, I think we potentially could hire another coach on defense, which they ultimately did, and let Ron kind of walk around much like he did the last 2/3 of the year, if that makes sense. I think that's the kind of when we started making progress. So I think just the expertise and the feedback and having eyes on each position from a meeting individual, I think that part was healthy for us. So yeah, I think we're in the inside linebacker coach world now. That could happen. So we could potentially go down the path and offense as well. So he's kind of talking about adding more guys on the offensive side of the ball, which won't please anybody because Napier's still calling the plays. I do want to go into the portal talk just a little bit here for a quick second. So was asked about it, was asked about his approach to it, pulled two quotes or two little tidbits from the article that I liked. And I got your thought before the show, and I realize now that I probably was dumb, but I'm going to reread it and we're going to go over it. So they asked him not having to push as hard in the portal. And this is what Billy's response was to not having to or just not doing it in general. It says, look, I think we've committed to signing. This is probably our third big group, really fourth big group of high school players. Our portal number has went down each cycle. After the first month of last season, I was like, maybe I misjudged this thing and messed it up. Now, this is where I got confused when I read it. So I asked Cam, I go, what first month of the season? Like, he's talking about like this year, he feels like in January he messed up when he first got here. And Cam clarified he's more so talking about that first month going back to August when we played, obviously, Miami and A&M. It just looked like we were lost out there. in the sense, and Cam, that's what Cam said, of like, maybe I should have went out and got more guys with more experience. Maybe I should have done these things. But then he says, but look, I still do have conviction about it. Young players at certain positions need time, and there are the same that are able to contribute early. I think we've got competitive depth across the board there, and we've got some room. So ultimately, he panicked at first, like maybe I trusted too much. But as we saw the defense turned around and other things came together, he's like, no, we stuck to our roots and it worked. The plan worked out. We just made some errors. Is that fair to say, Cam?
Yeah, and again, to his credit, it did end up working out. Whether that's he got lucky or the strategy worked out. I think maybe a little bit of both. Because did take almost 2/3 of the season for the defense to fully turn around and truly be a top defense. But even some of the portal moves too. He talked about that Florida doesn't always get the flashiest guy, and we've talked about this before. That can be frustrating. That you have these guys not even make it to campus, or these big names from other SEC schools enter the portal, and they're like, hey, this is a position of need for Florida. They should go after him, and Florida whiffs. And so they don't always get the flashiest guy, but the production has been pretty good from some of these transfer guys. I mean, I don't think anyone really wanted George Gums except for Florida. He's one of the
I wanted
better
George,
defensive.
big George guy.
Uh, and Triquez Bridges, I know that he played at Oregon, but he wasn't a big name that a bunch of schools were targeting or everything like that. He comes to Florida and he's one of the most versatile defensive backs in recent years. Now, of course, you're going to have your portal misses. I mean, that's no different for any school. But again, Florida's had some really good portal hits. And Billy's acknowledged that too, that they have conviction in the process of the production that some of these guys bring. Even though they're not the flashiest, they believe that they can make high impact plays for his team in their various roles. So, it's just you can't have both sides. You either live or die by the portal. You can't have you know you have the FSU model. They go all in on the portal. Their entire team is reset by the portal. Or you could have the other side where you get your high school class. Florida's is pretty dang good. You figure out your holes and then you fill it in the winter and spring portal periods. Florida's not done too. Spring
Yeah,
portal opens up, and he even alluded to that too. That we have some room to work with. We'll evaluate our needs from there and add more depending on what's out there. But Florida's in a position to where they're not necessarily done. It's kind of wait and see, and I know that frustrates everyone because it always feels like it's wait and see. But I like what they've done. They found needs in the portal that they hit. Uh, they got their backup quarterback. They got their starting receiver. They got the
cornerback.
punter, which I love. So, it's they got needs. They're not done. Um, and I also like that they focus on high school recruiting. Our guy Blue Orange Gator, Dave, and his other Twitter account always talks about, I'd rather get the high school guys and spend money on building a high school class than putting all this money into portal guys that you just whiff on. And, Florida does a good job of building a high school class. So I don't see any issues with it. I don't have issues with the team that's coming in this year. I like what Florida's put together. I think that they are built to have a successful season this year. I truly think the only thing that's going to hold them back could be the offensive coaching and the play calling, because
Oh,
that's
here we
just
go.
seems like
Here we go.
you. But I like the defensive staff that they put together. I like the hires. I love the recruits. They got a core group back. The only thing holding Florida back next year is Florida, and we'll see how it goes.
Dave.
Yeah, I mean, he makes a good point. I mean, you look at some of the guys that we took out of the portal last year. I mean, George Gums wasn't the highest rated guy out of the portal, but look at what he's done here at the University of Florida. I mean, Shamir DK wasn't the highest rated guy out of the portal. Look what he did. Traquise Bridges, same thing, not the highest rated guy in the portal. So, yeah, he may have had some misses along the way, but also the evaluation. And I've always credited Billy Napier on his evaluation talent of getting good players in here. Now, and it goes, and a lot of people will say, like, look, these kids, you're asking for their tape, you're doing this, you're doing that. And at the same time, though, like, if you're really studying your player and you're studying his character and the way that he, goes about his business off the field, I mean, when it comes to on the field, he's going to put in that much more effort when it comes to making plays, working out in the weight room, that kind of stuff. So, I think he's got a good mixture. I mean, he learned from the GOAT, Nick Saban. Obviously, he's not the most, I guess, vocal and argue, I would say, boastful kind of coach where he's just going to grab you by the, helmet and tell you whatever. But I think the evaluation part of Billy Napier, I can say now the offensive mind, he struggled there a little bit. I know me and Shelton got into a little bit in the Discord about it earlier today, but um, as I said, I think 2 podcasts ago, I said, look, if Billy Napier can take his 28 point, I think it was like 28.6 from last year, 28 points per game, he can raise it to 30, 31, giving up less on defense, maybe bring it down a couple more points or maybe even 3 or something like that. You've seen how the defense turned around at the end of the year. I think Florida will have a chance to beat a lot of teams on the schedule. Now, I will give Billy Napier credit here too. You don't have DJ Lagway without Billy Napier recruiting him. And everybody's like, oh, well, DJ Lagway is going to save him and he's only going to be good because of Lagway. Well, he recruited him. So yeah, if it wasn't for him, you wouldn't have him in the first place. So now he gets to use him because that's how the game is played. So, it is exciting. Lagway being in his second year, seeing what he did just as a true freshman coming out there straight from high school. The second year of DJ Lagway is really going to be, I think, a really big catalyst for this offense of whether it's going to go down the field and score those 2 to 3 more points per game, or even more than that, or it's going to be like, okay, well, Billy Napier, you might not be using Lagway right. You may need to run the ball. I think he's going to figure all of that out in the spring and in the summer. And look, you got to think these quarterbacks that, Billy Napier had, Anthony Richardson wasn't his quarterback. Mertz was a quarterback. He got out of the portal. We went after other quarterbacks. We missed on those. He did get Mertz. He did what he could with Mertz, and I think he did a productive job of keeping Mertz from turning over the football the first year. Second year didn't really work out for him. Obviously, he got hurt. But now you're on to DJ Lagway. So this will be Billy Napier's actual high school recruited quarterback. So it makes it a little bit more exciting for Florida Gator fans. But I can see where the fans are 3 years back, and they're saying, okay, look, we haven't seen much on offense, but you gotta take a step back. Even I gotta take a step back and just be like, hey, look, this is actually Billy Napier's high school recruited quarterback. I mean, you've got coaches like Mario Cristobal that can't develop a quarterback, that keeps having to dip into the portal to get one. You got somebody that can actually develop a quarterback now. So yeah, Florida State too. So I mean, eventually the transfer portal, that's going to run out, and you're not going to be able to use it as much here in the future because of the portal periods they got now and stuff like that. So
I felt like it wasn't
I think
the
he's done
sexy
a good
this
job.
year. I don't think it was.
Yeah, I
There
think
wasn't the talent. Like, I mean, last year we had like the Caleb Downs. Like, there were some bigger hit names. I don't feel like we had kind of shell shock names this year. I think it was a little less.
Well, I think part of that too was shocking coaching departures or firings. Like you didn't have Saban leave
True.
Alabama,
And the
leave
college football
Washington.
expanding
The
things.
cycle as a whole this offseason, it wasn't. I know when Napier was kind of on the hot seat, Lane Kiffin was a big name, and if that had gone to fruition, maybe that would have kickstarted a massive coaching cycle. But that didn't happen this year either. The portal, it wasn't sexy. There were some good names out there, and some teams that made moves. I automatically think of like Oklahoma and John Mateer. Stephon Shivers was obviously a big name for the defensive line, but they're just it wasn't great necessarily. Like how much would some of these guys have truly made an? And even Billy mentioned it today too. And I know that we've had debates about this in the Discord about Florida spending and saying how much money they have with the buyout and spending in the portal. But he said this portal cycle was expensive, and again, you kind of relate to NIL. What is a player's true worth versus what they're asking for? Are you willing to pay that much, even if you have that money? Maybe some of these guys were just asking for too much and it just wasn't worth it. Now, granted, the next question is, well, Florida says they have the money to pay for it anyways. Why wouldn't they? But it's true. Some of the numbers that we saw were really kind of outlandish for what some of the talent was out there. So it is what it is. And again, going back to Billy and DJ, I'd argue too, Urban Meyer wasn't the same head coach without Alex Smith, without Tim Tebow, and without JT Barrett. You know what I mean? Like
I was just gonna say that.
Yeah. DJ Lagway, Napier's guy, and I people forget too. DJ was limited last year when he first took over as the starting quarterback. The first go around, he's still kind of learning the offense and getting comfortable. Second go around, he was playing on one hamstring. So sky's the limit him fully healthy and with an offseason of development under his belt, and 4 offensive linemen returning. Your starting tight end is returning. Trey Wilson's coming back. The bulk of your running back room is returning. And you didn't have any major offensive coaching changes that could put a hiccup in his development. Now, you could also argue on that side that Florida didn't do anything to really improve its offense from a staff standpoint by hiring an OC or, making a change on the offensive line or anything like that. But there's no excuse for this year for this offense to have a pretty good year. They've got the tools, they've got the keys, they got the development. It's time to hit the ball rolling and get some points back in Gainesville and start competing for national championships again.
He said,
Oh, go ahead. One last thing, just to clear out, and I will say, like with an offensive ability, Napier runs, it's a very run heavy offense. So you're going to drain a lot of clock. So there's not a lot of time to score points. So you may not even see him hit the 40-point per game average unless his defense is just getting a bunch of turnovers. But I will say that it's not Doug Nussmeier running the offense. I mean, we were scoring like 18 points per game with Doug Nussmeier. I think Billy has a good balance in his offense. I just think he needs to figure out a way just to score a little bit more points.
have more of a killer mindset. So in regards to your expensive comment, I thought this was interesting that Billy said this. He says, look, I think they asked him about kind of just the overhaul from the portal and the class. He goes, I think positional needs, I think ultimately you're getting this is much like the NFL, your draft class, your free agent class. What do you got coming back? What did you lose? I think it was an expensive cycle, just to be very blunt about it. So that affects your strategy to some degree. I think now we're a little bit more boxed in just from a rev share component. There's things that contribute to that. We got a punter. We're able to get an edge player or corner. And he spoke about the edge player, Kofi. He says he's off to a great start. He's added probably 12 to 15 pounds, played really well against SEC teams. He's 6'4", 3/4. He's 85 wingspan. So kind of bragging about him a lot. He's a good worker, good movements. But the fact that he said it was expensive. This is something we've talked about on the show. People are like, oh, we need to be more aggressive. I'm like, yo, we need to keep what we got. Like, reel them guys back in. Like, protect that line. I mean, who knows what calls DJ we're getting? Who knows what the calls that Eugene Wilson we're getting? Like, that was key priority. So for him to be transparent, that was huge. Again, and he even spoke to the rev share thing, which we've talked about. And we still have a lot to go over because he talks about the GM hire and the salary cap, which, Cam, I don't know if you got to go, but I got some more questions if you're good. I don't know if you got Timmy to me on Wednesday. Best day of the week. Well, hey, before we hop into, look, Napier does address offensive coordinator stuff, and I have to talk about it because if Billy talks about it, I have to talk about it. It's the rule. And we haven't talked about if.
I thought that we were done talking about offensive coordinators. The clickbait on this show is ridiculous. You just quit it. Okay, you're baiting people and these poor fans that are expecting good news, and here you are. Just every time you put in all caps on the title, always about an offensive coordinator. I don't have news. Quit asking me. Spell it correctly. Like this is ridiculous. That the clickbait on this show is just something else.
Oh, I was about to say this
new offensive coordinators coming in per insider.
Listen,
I was about to say you got to add in the misspelling.
Hey, easy, okay? Fingers get fat, boys. Fingers get fat. Let me go ahead and plug the show real quick. The show's brought to you by Prize Picks, boys and girls. We love Prize Picks. Big fan of Prize Picks. We rock and roll with them. I gave you guys my lineup for Monday. Still feeling pretty good about it. Obviously, both quarterbacks get a freebie, which we'll talk about here in just a minute. And of course, you'll get a little extra cheddar when you use the code HIGHTOP. But let's talk about just this week only until February 9th, which is the Super Bowl. The big game is almost here, and it's now or never. Don't miss out on the last football game of the season with Prize Picks, the best place to win cash while watching the big game. Prize Picks is also giving away a free pick for the game where one of the starting quarterbacks, like I just mentioned, will only need to throw 1 yard to win. A freebie, boys. If you're correct on at least one more stat projection, you can win real cash. So you add one more to the freebie, you're rocking and rolling. Check out the promos tab to tell any of the super sweet Millie winners big game lineups. If you tell a lineup that goes 3 for 3, you can win a split of $1 million in promo funds. Again, that is Prize Picks. Use the code HIGHTOP. When you play your first $5, you get back $50 by using that code HIGHTOP when you download the app Prize Picks. Get in on the action. Sunday should be an absolute blast. The perfect time to be able to get in on it. And I'm sure Dave will muster one up. That guy's pretty good. Won a fatty not too long ago. So, Prize Picks, run your game. Now let's get back to yelling at Cam and Dave. All right. just to confirm, Napier is calling plays. Okay,
Is he calling plays?
no, he's calling. No, hey, no clickbait. He's calling plays. All right.
Okay.
But
All right.
we did promote Russ. That was true. Everyone got. I mean, that was.
I may ask you next month if Billy Napier's calling plays, but
That's
for
fine.
right now,
We'll talk about it. Look, the reason I brought it up is because
spring camp, I'll be on Russ watch if he's in the booth or not. If people hope, I remember that going from last year too. We'll keep the clickbait going. I know I just yelled at you, but we'll try to help the show out as much as we can during our coverage.
well, you're gonna do this, and you're gonna get me just roped in. Like I don't like you're gonna get me in trouble in the comments. When I see those comments, I'm like, I can't win anymore. I'm just trying to help the people out, just trying to keep them informed. I don't. Anyways, no, what got people rowdy was when Zach came on. I'm still getting dragged for that. They're like, oh, no big news. All right, like you got me. I don't know what you want me to do. Anyways,
yeah, that's the problem. When you're the bearer of the bad news or good news, you get the accolades or you get spanked. So
I'm always getting spanked, I feel like your mom. But this is where I want to go over is they did ask him on wanting to continue. Here's what I like. They asked him why he wants to continue to call plays. Not if he is asking, not if he is, but why he does it. He goes, yeah, I mean, it's what got me here. It's the way. It's how I became the head coach. It's what helped us make progress and win in the past. I'm confident it will help us do that in the future. And then someone said, is it an annoying question to be asked? He goes, I mean, look, I'm beyond that. We get it. We're going to always be. It's a production business. My job is to get the team to win, and I try to make decisions that reflect that. I still have conviction about it. Then they asked, if you did hand over play calling, would it be more likely to someone you groomed than an outside hire? He really didn't answer this question. He said, I think one cycle at a time. I think what I try to do is evaluate things as objectively as I can. He didn't give it. This was the only thing he gave us very coach speak. I would just be talking in circles. But look, I like the fact of like it's what got me here. It's the reason why I'm having the success. We always say it. Napier's going to live or die on it, and he would look to you and go, I've lived on it this far. It's got me to become the head coach of the Florida Gators. So yeah, I'm gonna stick to it. And I've told you, we all know where I stand on it. I have conviction in it as well. I respect it. He's got a point. Yeah, I know y'all hate it, and you're going to yell at me about it, and that's fine. We'll agree to disagree. But I like it. We don't have to talk too much about this, but I like that he at least was addressed it in that manner. Kind of just like, what do you want me to do? I like the swagger about it.
I've come to the conclusion. Oh, go ahead, Cam. I'll go after you.
I'll pass it to you, Dave.
I was just gonna say that as far as my opinion on it or whatever, whether I disagree or agree with it, I mean, Billy Napier has pretty much said, I'm going to live by the sword or I'm going to die by the sword. And, I give him credit for sticking to his guns, not listening to the noise outside. And you even heard him, I think it was like it was like last year sometime when, they were losing and Scott gave him the vote of confidence. And he said, look, I deserve the criticism. This isn't where this is supposed to be. So I will give Billy Napier credit for taking, whatever the fans have said about him on Twitter or whatever we said about him or whether it was good or bad. And he said, look, I deserve everything I get, the accolades good or bad, but he's sticking to his guns. And that's something I guess you have to respect in a way. So, at least what I like about him is he seems like he's never fazed by anything. And that can be a good thing and it can be a bad thing at the same time. But at least he's one of those guys that's just going to live by the sword, die by the sword. So
he said, Muschamp died by the sword. I like it. Good.
And to that point too, you can agree, at least in my eyes, you can agree or disagree about him calling plays. It is respectable that he stuck to his guns through all the hard times and admitted that they've had some bad times, but they've stuck through it and things are working out now. Again, like I don't agree with necessarily him calling plays, but he's also a football coach and I'm a journalist. What do I know? So we'll kind of wait and see with this, but it's interesting the way that he admitted that too. That this is where it's gotten him. I understand why he wants to have that control. Head coaches like having control, especially if you have a coordinator basically running your defense in Ron Roberts. That just kind of makes you want to hold on to the offensive control a little bit too. That way you have a gauge of knowing of what's going on anyways. That way you're a head coach who is in charge and you got your hands in on your team. And so I understand him wanting to have that control. He is an offensive coordinator. He has that experience. So we'll wait and see. What I also like what they said is he's kind of reshuffled a little bit the offensive staff as far as the individual who does what. Like, I know that they haven't made any offensive staff changes from, firings and hirings and departures or anything like that. It seems like everyone's going to be back for next year. I know that they promoted Russ Callaway to your actual offensive coordinator, but it seems like everyone's they've reshuffled the roles so that maybe he can focus a little bit more on play calling now that he's going to have a general manager and a VP and all that stuff. Now that Ron Roberts has fully taken over the defense, maybe that does alleviate some of the stress for Billy, where now he can focus on play calling a little bit more and maybe actually get better at it and keep the foot on the gas in crucial moments. Maybe, reshuffling with Russ Callaway and Rob Sale and all those guys having other roles, and, your analysts too, and Ryan O'Hara being able to coach the quarterbacks, and David Decker having a bigger role as like an assistant receivers coach or something like that. That could open up more for Billy to focus on offensive play calling, where maybe he actually does get better at it. Maybe, there is improvement there. So there's a lot on the table. The NCAA getting rid of the on-field coaching limitations opens up a lot for Florida too. He even hinted that they could make some offensive hirings. Anything's on the table right now for improving that. So, I understand why he wants to keep something the same in an era of change. But again, he'll either live by that sword or die by that sword. We'll have to wait and see. I like the players that he's put at least, and that's going to help him. But we'll see how this does for the offense.
He also, talking about Rob Sale, somebody asked, is everyone extended? Because, again, we're still waiting on a few names. And I don't think Peterson has been extended either. But he says, for the most part, yes. I mean, there's some of those deals are not done. Hopefully, we'll get everybody back. So, interesting to see. But there's still a few out there that are kind of floating around and not completed yet.
Yeah, the only ones, I think it's Jaluk, Gonzalez, and now Chapman. And I don't even think Chapman's deal was expiring anyways. I think they just gave him a new deal. But those are the ones that at least have been reported on and announced. I know Billy has already said that they expect everyone to be back anyways. They're just working out the little details on that. So, we'll see. But again, you almost had Gerald Chapman leave for the Bears. Maybe someone else leaves on the offensive staff. We'll have to wait and see. And what does that open up? Deals aren't done. We're a week into February. The contract has just expired. They're still flushing all that out and figuring out and negotiating and working all that stuff out. So we'll see if any changes happen. I don't anticipate any changes happen, but you never know in this era.
Absolutely. And last little bit here, Matt Rule started this madness. Wait, that's not it. I actually know. I've got two more things. Man, I told you we had a lot to go over.
That's a lot of stuff. Nothing happened today, man.
Well, I feel like they save it. Billy saves it for Wednesday, and I appreciate it. We've got this, and then we're gonna go over the Matt Rule stuff. I forgot we had this. I'm glad I have it though. But this is so they're still hiring a GM. We talked at the top of the show where they hired this Ben Essler guy to be or a VP, excuse me, and he's gonna work for this guy they put into place. But I guess I just want to pick your brain a little bit more on it because he alludes to a cap, which I like. He goes, look, this is what he said. I think there's more recent hire. I think the most recent hire is a director of football strategy, which we just got. I think there's a little more contracts, caps, and analytics. We're a year away from having a lot of data, but both in the rev share space and the marketing / endorsement space. We're getting ready to kind of stabilize the market to some degree because we're going to be using comps to reference. I think that's been the struggle here since we got here. Is there a lot of uncertainty about what is this market? What is real, the evolution of the market. Certainly the spring semester was the most outrageous market of all time. I think everybody kind of pushed their chips to the middle before RevShare starts on July 1st, which we've talked about that with Zach a little bit. We'll see here where we're at April 7th. There will be some things there from a settlement standpoint, but we're getting the front office built out to be more strategic about the salary cap, the contracts, RevShare, marketing, and the pool of money that could become available. So we've heard about it, but what it does excite me in a football standpoint that we are headed towards this salary cap in college football. Now, when I asked Zach about this rev share thing, I thought it was going to fix it, but the way that he described it didn't make me feel like it was going to fix it unless I misunderstood him. Are you familiar with it? Maybe you could tell my dumb head again in a different way to where I can make sense.
Well, the balance is going to be essentially, just being blunt, who gets what. How much money does DJ
Sure.
Lagway get from versus a freshman offensive lineman? How much money does the other sports get to? How do you split this up? That's what it's going to be. How are the contracts for revenue share going to work? Are you going to be able to sign players to multi-year deals? Is that
Mm.
going to affect them from portal if they can?
Yep.
What does a 5-star quarterback in the SEC get in relation to a safety in the Big Ten?
Mm.
Florida's going to have to answer that too, because who's to stop a safety on the SEC from going to a Big Ten school because he can make more money through revenue share? That's the numbers game where they'll have the set number from the league, from the revenue share. How do you split that money up amongst 105 players on your football roster and your other sports?
So
So that's what this guy's going to be in charge of. This front office is going to be a big team who collaborates with each other, but this guy's main role is going to be the contracts. Where does that money go? Who gets what?
where can we overextend? This is what he's worth. But my question is, because again, the rev share part of it is like, okay, my assumption is that whatever the SEC brings in, they split it between the 16 teams. Let's say that number is 20 million. So now the schools all have 20 million, right? Which would be good because then the money is now evenly spread across, depending on how good your conference does, which still allows for SEC and Big Ten to elevate themselves because they're going to have more revenue just because they're better than everybody else. We know that. But the way that I understood it is like there's 20 million plus the money that's being floated around right now through NIL, right, and boosters is still going to be part of the game, which
NIL will still be a thing. I know some programs are just getting rid of their collectives as a whole so that they could just focus on the revenue share. Florida's obviously not doing that. They've made an investment into Florida Victorious. I know Florida Victorious has also made investments into its organization, with Del Torre coming on as director of content, Bree Wade moving over. So Florida's finding a good balance, I think, with while they'll have the university side of it dealing with the revenue share, Florida Victorious is still going to be active. They'll still have NIL deals for players. The GM side of it too, with the organization, is going to have to figure out that balance too of like, if a guy makes $1 million from NIL, does he get more revenue share too? Or do you balance that revenue share with someone else who's not making as much NIL so that they could play catch up, essentially make the same amount of money, and you get to keep your team intact?
Sure.
How do you that balance? And so it's a big question that year one is going to be kind of like a guinea pig with that. And it's going to change from year to year too. You can have again, we're using the backup safety example. You have a backup safety who gets X amount of money from NIL or X amount of money from revenue share. Well, what if he has an all SEC freshman season? How much revenue share does he get in year two? You don't want to change it? How much revenue share could he get from a Big Ten school? So it's a tough balance that really it is going to be year to year. And then that's also where, how do you work out the contracts for some of these guys? Do you do a revenue share contract to where no matter how you play in year one, year two, you're going to get this X amount of money too? It's up to you to make up for NIL if that's what you want to do. I'm glad I'm not crunching those numbers. I can tell you that right now.
Look,
so,
you know how you crunch those numbers really easily? Here's some money under the table. That's what everybody's
okay.
doing.
So that's my thing, right? Because I want clarity. I want this to be a clean process. I'm all for the money. Like I'm not complaining about that, and I know I'm not gonna get this perfect little world, but I think for transparency purposes, so I can be done with these conversations, like Florida's just cheap. They don't want to spend the money. Like if there's an actual revenue share and it's just like, okay, here's your 22 million. And then, so we spend the 22. And now how we choose to spend that, we could still lose, right? Like, hey, we're choosing to spend more on these position groups and these position groups. That's fine with me, right? We're all spending 20 million. But then we also can move the needle where maybe they do take less in revenue share because our Florida Victorious group does a really good job. That's what I want it to get to. But my concern is that there's still going to be the outside money that has an involvement, and all of this, all you're doing is just putting more money into the pot, but not necessarily cleaning the money. Am I wrong there? Do you understand what I'm asking?
Yeah, like so the revenue share directly from the SEC, first of all. So you got to think of revenue share and NIL are two separate pots. Now, I know that that may not be the case, but revenue share is going to come directly from the SEC with their television deal.
Yeah.
NIL is not going to change for Florida as far as boosters or fans signing up or
Hold
money
on,
under the table.
But so, okay, so there's three parts then. And I don't want to get on the tangent because my thing is I know there's NIL now where you can sign deals like the Gatorade deals and Nintendo deals, but the non-fake or how we pay these guys now, right? They're getting paid now. It's not through the NIL deals. It's through boosters. It's just by guys donating a lot of money and giving these kids contracts. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, let's be blunt. That's
Okay.
what it is.
So
And it's
can,
not just that's nationwide. That's
yeah.
that's
So,
just the
but
way.
is that part going to go away because the rev shoes?
I
That's
don't
what I
think so.
want. That's what I want to
I
happen. So there's more
there's
clarity
just
to
gonna
this.
there's just gonna be more money for players, and now it affects your NIL spending with how that money goes. Again, using the example of
We're doomed.
if you have your million in revenue share, player gets a million of that. Well, do you still allocate NIL funds for that player, or do you give it to someone else? How
Well,
if you're a booster and you're paying a quarterback $1 million, well, that player's getting $1 million from revenue share. Do you still give him $1 million through you, or do you go give it to someone else so that you could keep them on the team?
that's the
I
problem
think
is
that
because if he's used to getting 2 million, if he knows he can get 2 million, he's just going to ask for 2 million. So all it's doing is just putting more money into the bank. I was hoping what it would do would be okay. Let's say the boosters are raising all that money. It takes that out of it because that's where I think a lot of Florida fans and we get frustrated because it's like, why aren't the boosters giving more? Why isn't NIL giving more? And this would make it cleaner if it was just, hey, your NIL collection can create deals, fantastic, and then the revenue share. That's how you pay these guys. That's it. Nothing, no other involvement. We get it back and clean it up a little bit. That was what I was intending and hoping for. That would make the whole thing better. With this, all you're doing is just literally adding a third revenue stream to the factor. These and all the kids are gonna be like, I don't care that I was paying $1 million before. You have an extra $1 million to give me. Thank you. I'll take that. And we're gonna be in the same boat that we were in. So
well, maybe it does clean it up. Again, this is brand new.
maybe.
Maybe it does end up working itself out, but
Okay.
that's at least my
I'm gonna
is
hold it
that
against you.
it's just a whole nother issue. But at least you have the organization now who could focus on allocating those funds appropriately, finding a balance between NIL and revenue share. Some schools are just eliminating it altogether between getting rid of collectives and just saying revenue share and donate your NIL to the school and it'll go in our revenue share pot and we're just not going to deal with this. I like that
That's
Florida's at least keeping revenue share open because again, the players deserve money. More money to them, better Florida could be, bigger investment they can make into the program. They just have to find the right people to figure out the puzzle, figure out the math
Yeah.
problem, and go all into it. And again, it's a year by year thing. So whatever works in year one may not work in year two, and they have to be ready for it.
Yeah, and if you have the right people in place, you never have to hear the word budget, expensive, none of that kind of stuff anymore. You'll have somebody in charge that knows how to allocate all of this money. And hopefully, Florida hired the right person to do that or hires the right person and personnel on top of that to do that with. Of course, no matter who we hire, we're still going to have to see the results and see what year one brings. Obviously, with the changes in college football and the changes to the playoff and the changes to everything else, I'm sure there's going to be changes to this revenue sharing thing too as the years go on. But I do think, in a way, that it's going to bring back some of the under the table bags that we
yeah.
used to see before NIL. I just don't know how much of that we're going to see.
We're still doomed. That's basically where we're at. So look, all in all, good information. I think where you kind of nailed on the head too, Cam, is that look, it could change, but and this is where it's heading. And I'm hoping that it will help it clean it up. Last little topic here, then we'll go. It's been a great show, long show, but a lot of information that I've been wanting to talk about, and I'm glad we were able to do that. Thoughts on canceling the spring game? So obviously, Matt Rule spoke about in his presser about canceling it because of potential tampering and the things that he dealt with last year. Cody and I talked about it on the show, and he's going to love Napier's response, which I do too, of the way that he handled it. What do you think of Nebraska canceling the spring game? He says, look, I think to each his own. I'm either going to have coaches tampering with my players, or I'm going to have a fan base that's pissed off. We don't have a spring game. Pick your poison. he knows what's up. I love it. He's like, I don't need these guys pissed off any more than they already are. You could just come tamper with my players. I'll fight with those guys. What a legend. He'd rather, that's how bad we are, guys, okay? Billy rather face DJ Lagway being tampered with than to deal with us being pissed off. He's like, I can't do it anymore. Come take my players. I thought it was
Yeah,
hilarious.
well, I figure that dealing with this fan base is probably worse than having somebody tamper with your players. So I would go with him too.
Yeah.
I don't like it's not going to stop tampering. Let's be real. Whether you have a spring game or not, coaches are too connected with each other to not know what's going on
Yeah.
in a spring practice setting. You know what I mean? With insiders out there and these practice reports and all that, and boosters who go to these practices, and even they put information out there sometimes because of what they see.
Yep.
Former players go to practice, put out information from what they see. It's not going to stop schools from tampering, whether what happens in a spring game or not. And you also forget too that the idea of getting recruits on campus for a spring game, getting to put something on film for your guys to work with, getting to play in the swamp in front of fans. I mean, that's too important for Billy to give up, and he's rightfully so. You can't just give that up. The spring game isn't just a random scrimmage for guys to fool around and have fun and get a practice in. It's a game day experience for these guys to get a real setting in, and fans go and have fun doing it. And it's an action-packed weekend for Gator sports too, between baseball and softball. They're making an event out of this, so it's too important to just get rid of. Because listen, if you're afraid of schools tampering with your guys, maybe get better at keeping them. You know what I mean? Like, if you're that worried of guys watching a spring game and going, I'm going to steal your players, maybe get better at being able to keep your players. Like, that's
Yeah,
just like, you're going to cancel the game because you're worried about someone who's not focused on their own spring camp
Yeah.
watching yours.
Yeah.
Like,
You got,
get
he's just,
yourself.
it's him being a
you
baby.
can't. Like, you can't play scared. Like, you got to just go ahead and do your normal routine. Like, you can't just let somebody, oh, he's going to tamper my players, scare you into not having a spring game. Like, that's just ridiculously stupid.
He said, I think it's a healthy experience for players. I think it's great. I can still remember some of these rookies last year talking about they're just blown away. Like this, that's the biggest. Joey Slackman said, man, that was the biggest crowd I've ever played in front of. So there's a healthy component to filling that thing up, playing a game. I think we played like 50 players on both sides. Just that process of preparing, dividing the teams. I think there's still a lot of positives there. And again, he does split it up. He allows these guys to kind of do probably like a dodgeball pick'em style where there is investment into this and putting this team. There's a lot of passion that goes behind this. I remember 2 years ago when Armstrong, we had the famous hand motion because of just you could tell there was a lot of animosity, good animosity built up for this game. Look, I love it. We talked about it.
They split up the entire organization from video crew to student
Yeah.
assistants to
You learn a lot too
they
when
do
you
a
do that. It gives someone an opportunity to maybe stand out when they normally wouldn't, because a guy that, is third on the video squad on general, when they get split up, now he's one, maybe two, and he can have an opportunity for his voice to be heard. And it's like, we've been sleeping on this kid. And he just showed himself because we did this exercise.
Yeah, it's a lot bigger than what happened in 22 guys on the field. At least the way Florida does it. So they can't afford to not have it because of the opportunity that it has for recruiting, the organization, fan involvement. Look, I think Billy would be the first to tell you that he can't afford too many pissed off fans. I think he'll still do what he wants to do, and it won't dictate anything. But I think pissing off the fans over not having a spring game is not worth it. Have the spring game, get the fans involved, get them invested into the program. I don't know how many Florida Victorious banners they have during the spring game, but that's an important side of it too with NIL. You can't just get rid of this because you're afraid of tampering. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. Tampering happens.
Yeah.
Get over it.
Yeah.
Have a spring game. Let's get the ball rolling.
People were mad when they had the spring game on a Thursday. Could you imagine what happens if they cancel it?
It's true. I also need the opportunity for when he's doing the live interviews from the field for whoever interviews him to ask about his thoughts on calling plays. Because if we don't have that, what am I going to talk about? So we need these things. We need these things to keep the ball rolling. Well, boys, I mean,
and last year, I was just going to add. Last year, they did a great Florida Victorious event after the spring game. You got to meet all the players and a lot of people that don't get to get next to these players or even interview them like me and Shelton do, or get to talk to them. Like a lot of fans got to meet the players. Yeah, we tampered a little bit, but but yeah, I mean, it was a fun event. I got to record a lot of video from it and all that. Thanks to Jen, no longer Florida Victorious, but thanks to her now, you had Bree, some other people in there too. So it should be hopefully Florida Victorious will have another event there. I have to ask. I actually have to ask Nick if they will, but
it's got to be.
Yeah, it's got to be. Yeah.
Well, great show as always. Always a pleasure when we're able to have Cam on and talk a lot of great things. They said, why is Dave's collar popped? Because he's forgetting about it. Cam, tell them where they could follow you, whether it's on Home Improvement. Joe, I mean, there's just so many places where they could find you, but tell them where they can find you, boss.
Yeah, I'm currently on tour as a Travis Tritt cover. So, if you want to listen to good country music, I'll have an album out soon. I'm just kidding. Of course, I should be nowhere near a microphone to sing. But, yeah, Florida Gators on SI. We'll have some baseball stuff as the baseball season gets started in 9 days, I think. Then spring football, obviously, in March, and basketball season came out with a great win the other day. So, we're getting full sail into the football offseason, but a lot of content that we'll have on the site. And then on X at Cam Parker 25 as well.
I love it. Cam, thank you as always. We appreciate you. Tell Mom Parker we love when we said hi.
I will do, boys. I'll talk to y'all later. I'm sure I'll be stuff in the Discord chat, so we'll have some fun.
I love it, man. Be good. Thank you.
Thanks, Cam.
Cam's out of here, boys and girls. A great show. Jam-packed one. Talked about a lot of different things, man. Collars pop. We're feeling good. Hey, forget about it. A little GTL for the boys.
I forgot about it. I got my little GTL on the show. I'm doing good. I'm doing good like Benny over there in Siri. Get these guys into the Florida facility.
I love it. Beautiful Wednesday, boys and girls. Y'all be good. Smash the like button. Happy to see you here. I'm sure we'll see you once again. Got a big game on Saturday, basketball-wise. We'll be doing some Saturday shows late at night. Cody and I are going to bring in Tyler on that show, talking all things college football and a little bit of basketball. It's been fun. Had a great time talking with all of you guys. And, of course, Super Bowl's on Sunday. Who you feeling? What you liking? Smash it, subscribe it, do all the good stuff all about it, whatever you need to do. Almost at 25,000 subs. Help us get there. We love y'all. Until next time, I'm Sheldon. That's Dave Swolda. We'll see you, boys. Peace and love, baby.